Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to podcast number 65 of the Gordon and Charisse Show. And we are so excited to be back with you today. Today is going to be a power-packed day with, honestly, the start of this title. I'm going to change it to a challenge question, but first...
Charisse, why are you changing the title, sweetheart?
Well, because, I just like to switch it around on you.
Well, hold on.
It's like ruffling your feathers.
I came up with this title, Stuck in the Quicksand of Your Painful Thoughts.
So my question is, are you stuck in the quicksand of your painful thoughts? And, boy, I think that I can attest that I have been many times. And quicksand is not an easy thing to get out of, is it?
No, because you keep sinking.
Mm-hmm.
And the message today is going to be a message about once we're caught in this vicious loop, how do we move forward and move forward with the mindset of transformation? But before we begin, kind of the warm up to the subject today, I want to talk about our stories.
Whose stories?
Our stories. It's our stories, the people in the audience, the people dealing with chronic pain, the spouses who are dealing with chronic pain. Mm-hmm. We just spoke at a conference in Granbury, Texas, entitled Live Today. And we noticed that there were as many spouses interested in what you had to say on how you were coping with someone with chronic pain. As well as how have you endured this process for 25 years?
There was one woman in particular, really, she stood out because she was at a place where I was many years ago. Bless her heart, I just wish I could hug her today. Because she just said, I don't know how to do it anymore. I don't know how to cope with my husband's pain. I just can't do it. In fact, she had admitted that she, at one point, had left him for a period of time because it was just too much. And I think at one time before I had ever maybe experienced what we've gone through, I could have maybe judged that and said, how could she even think that way? And you know what? You've mentioned the word story. Stories are stories. I'm not there to judge her pain as the spouse. I saw her pain and my heart reaches out to her. And she wanted a secret magic formula that I can't fully give. I think for me, the biggest thing that I've done is I've had to surrender. I've had to surrender to trying to fix the pain. And I told her, one thing that stands out on that conversation was, I just said, you're very, very tired. And often the one that's taking care of somebody who is hurting, they just start neglecting themselves. And that self-hatred and that just neglect, it's not going to stay that way forever. Eventually something will surface from doing that and stuffing and stuffing and stuffing. And I can attest to that in my own body. I started having physical ramifications for stuffing things down. And so for her, just to acknowledge her pain is brave, to acknowledge where she's been. I know I'm going on such a tangent here,
but for her to acknowledge her pain is also this. She's sharing that my story feels so individual and unique that no one else can really understand. How many times have we felt that way in our marriage where it's been like, if anyone could really see and feel what we're experiencing through suffering, okay, then they would get it. Then they would understand it. But the good news is this: if we take a look at everyone's stories, because they are individual to each person and each family unit and each relationship that's involved, they're jam-packed with layers of emotional pain and there's heavy mental stress in a lot of people's lives. But if we just stop for a second and just pause and just breathe in and then exhale and realize our stories are also this. They're part of a growing knowledge about God, about who we are, about transformation, about the details of life and death, about the sobering aspects, when we start focusing on that, then our stories really start to impact others greatly, because we all have different perspectives that we've experienced about long-term suffering and the possibility of healing or transformation.
And it's amazing because you realize that when you're part of a story, your life is part of a narrative, but there's so many narratives wrapped around your narrative. And that when we're part of something much bigger than ourselves, it's God's story first.
Absolutely.
And he's writing it not on our terms, but for our good.
But for our good. And that's what's so important. This is why we put the Better Living community, especially the private Facebook group, together. Mm-hmm. It's important to hear other people's stories. It's important to be vulnerable. It's important to communicate all of the things that are optimistic and inspirational for other people, that bring hope. Hope is so important.
I think that when people realize they don't have to put on a facade, so many of us have gone into a social setting or a church setting, and the sadness is a lot of times you feel like you have to put on another mask, another layer of being false instead of being real and transparent. And I think that we're called to equip the church to say, let's get real. Let's get real about pain. Let's get real about it. It's not about glorifying it. It's not about making it bigger than God, but it's about, okay, when somebody's suffering, they don't have to wear a mask. Be real. Just be transparent. And that Better Living community for me is a place of transparency. It's a place to take off some of those, to shed those layers, and to see that there is a community of people who actually do have a lot of similar things that they're experiencing, and they're not alone.
Right. And there's a lot of people in the community that are shedding their false self. Mm-hmm. And so this true self, I know for me, when I had that aha moment with the Lord, and I realized I couldn't do it all on my own effort. Mm-hmm. And I couldn't puff up the situation. I couldn't paint colors into the black and white reality of what pain and suffering was about. When I got to that point, it was almost an introduction for me. Hello, Gordon Selly. I'm meeting you again for the first time in years.
Yes.
And I'm seeing the damage that's been done. I'm seeing the brokenness. But I'm also seeing almost a child who's saying, you know what? My inner man, my soul, craves a father, craves a mentor. So I wanted that true self to walk as pure and as holy to God as I could. I knew that all the other parts of who I was not necessarily getting together. And that's the power of also sharing stories, is that people can say, hello, I'm meeting my new self right now.
Did you crave that connection with God more than you craved to be healed at some point when you were going through these aha moments?
I thought I craved healing and reducing pain to the point that I couldn't feel it anymore. Mm-hmm. But what happened is I was actually craving God more. I was craving the true God, the real God, the awesome God, the loving God, the God of grace, Jesus Christ. I was really craving that more than having full pain relief.
Wow.
Okay? So, but let's talk about today's subject, okay? So,
we've really gone on a tangent.
We have, but this is an important one. So you're entitling this, Are You Stuck in the Quicksand of Your Painful Thoughts? In other words, are we caught in this vicious loop mentally, in this vicious cycle in our lives where we don't feel like we're moving? And although our stories, Charisse, are chock filled with subjectivity, our own interpretation about pain, suffering, and the environment around us, I think it's important to do this first. Do not allow the subjectivity and the declining mental hope that ensues to make our suffering worse.
Yes, that's right.
Don't allow that to take over our mindset completely. Many of us find ourselves trapped within this unhealthy loop, chasing after our hidden, and oftentimes it's invisible suffering to others, but feeling the actual agony of its ever-present reality. Okay? It seems like, Sharice, I know for me as the years passed, the longer the nightmare seemed to last for me, and I didn't have that introduction to who Gordon Sully was as a true self, okay, the less I remembered what it felt like to live a pain-free existence.
To the point where you may not remember anymore.
I don't remember. I've had chronic pain for 28 years. I do not know what it feels like, what my life would be like to be pain-free.
And
I can imagine.
Yeah.
Of course I can imagine, yes, I could do these things physically and this and that. But even on the internal parts of who I was, I believe that my mindset has been more renewed. It's more recovered. My spiritual life is more mature. My inner man of who I am, the real important part of who I am, is actually more normal now than when I was pain-free.
Am I supposed to validate that you're normal?
No, you're not, Sharice. Okay? But there's a lot of people, I want them to be aware of this.
Right.
Okay? Just to get rid of the pain, to go back to who you are, you can be working right now on climbing out of that pit or climbing out of the quicksand right now with changing some of your painful thoughts.
And what if you based today, right now, if you said, I'm not getting out of bed until I'm pain-free. I'm not going to live today until I experience no more pain. You would have never lived.
I would have lived as I was existing.
Right.
Not living, not pursuing joy and hope and peace and seeing the bright spots out of other people's lives and having an optimistic point of view.
And, Gordon, optimism, it is part of your internal character. God has given you some grace on that. Some of us, like the woman across the table from you right now, I wasn't born with such an optimistic spirit, but you are a little bit contagious in your optimism. But I would say this, Gordon, that optimism, there's something fundamental about the thoughts that you think. And you and I both are very drawn into the mind and learning more and more. There's so much great research there about the mind. And I would love for you to share how that relates to your thought life.
Right. Well, let's take our thought life. Okay. For most people, our lives in our thoughts, okay, we are wired to what we're thinking. Now, I want you to imagine this. Studies show that we either have or process up to 70,000 thoughts per day.
And Dr. Carolyn Leaf says you can't even go 3 seconds without thinking.
Well, authors have written books. Can you pray for 1 minute without having a distracting thought? Can you focus on God for 1 minute? And there's usually thoughts that still dart in and out. We have at least 70,000 thoughts per day. So now imagine this: if you're in chronic pain and you're stuck in these painful thoughts. Imagine if most of our thoughts are consumed by pain, grief, toxicity, and deeper regret. We just dig that hole deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper. But we have good news with the new studies that are talking about neuroplasticity.
Explain that word.
First of all, let's pronounce that word.
Neuroplasticity.
Very good, Sharice. and what this is about your brain environment. And that word or that term helps to reorganize neural pathways in our brain to develop new wiring and to have new habits. Okay? According to one of the physicians I was reading, a professor of psychology at Drexel University, he said this: our neural connections change even after a 20-minute conversation.
Mm-hmm. That's so interesting.
So here we are, 70,000 thoughts a day. We can stay stuck in a pit over and over and over and over and beat ourselves up with guilt and shame and insufficiency and toxicity. We can do it over and over and sink deeper and deeper and deeper, but God still has a healing quality in our mind. He says you can renew your mind.
Mm-hmm.
You can focus your mind on new things, the truth, new ideas. You can start. I know for me, I have a hard time breaking an old habit.
I was about to say this, but you're saying it.
Okay?
Yes.
And my success comes from forget what is behind. Don't focus on the failure, learn from it, and start doing something new.
This has helped me in my observation of how you walk through pain, and it's helped me walk through my own pain. That you can't change or break a loop in your brain by just saying, I'm going to stop thinking this. It doesn't work, because then you're thinking about it again. Hello, I just moved the mic. But yeah, you don't stop it by saying, I'm going to stop it. Then those thoughts literally go back to where they began. It's like adding quicksand to quicksand. I so see that the power of transformation in the mind does begin with establishing a new thought, going in a different direction, establishing a new habit. That's how you lost over 70 pounds.
Right. And if this message today can just penetrate the heart of even one individual who's struggling right now, just one individual, feed your brain right now 20 to 30 minutes of something new, inspiring, and made of truth to help reconnect your neurons. Do it day by day. And what you're going to find, you're going to grow in a momentum of change.
Do it now.
And do it now. Mm-hmm. So people ask, well, how do I do it on my own? You don't have to do everything on your own. Today's technology does have communication media of podcasts. You can read books. You can watch YouTube sessions. You can follow various life coaches or business coaches and mentors and read scripture. There's several ways that you can feed that brain 20 to 30 minutes a day to start helping you to enforce your life towards better habits, better ways of living. Okay?
Even when the body is screaming, when I've observed your body screaming, I've seen you stay disciplined to change your mind even through that. Because, guys, this is not easy. We're not pretending that this is a cakewalk and that it's easy. The body can be raging. It can be saying, no, you just listen to me. And all I want to do is scream. The body or even the mind. I was about to say, or the mind, because sometimes my mind does that. But I have to say, it is true. When you establish something new and something healthy for your mind is craving to be renewed. It's engineered that way.
It's craving new food. It wants different hormones and chemicals to move through your body. Then you have a second brain in your gut, okay? Your body is craving healthy choices. And the truth, no matter how sharp it can penetrate, is healthy. It's optimal. It's light in darkness. It's power. It's real stuff. It changes your brain chemistry. And that's a big part of it. So when we're looking at neuroplasticity, we're also looking at perspectives. And perspectives can be like the gas that you put in the tank.
Yes, that's right.
And perspectives are powerful. So create those new habits. Okay? Don't sit there and just throw away or disregard some of the perspectives because they feel too big for you. They feel like you can't do them. And then we see people doing this. When you make some steps in forward movement and you feel like you're making those habits and you pursue relief, still pain relief and optimal living, even if it's temporary, I hate to say this, but it's relatively common to find yourselves looping back into more considerable pain and suffering. How many times have we taken a step forward where it felt like we took 2 steps backwards?
I've learned something from that.
I'm listening, Charisse.
Because it is true many times. Even in the matter of the last few weeks, I've seen some things in you. As we traveled to Texas, came back, you've been hit with a little bit harder pain condition just from being in a different environment and doing different things. But I would say that even though it feels like you're going backwards again, the growth you've made because your mindset has shifted, it's going to get you back on track faster.
Yes, it will.
So even when you feel like you've fallen backward, don't let that lie keep you back in the quicksand. Don't let it stick you back there. It's not true. You're making progress. You're making progress.
Yes, you are.
The very fact that you're choosing to even be open to renewing your mind and to putting something different in your mind, just know that alone is progress.
Absolutely.
Keep going.
So when you mention that about me, what are 3 things that I can share with someone else who's struggling with pain and they're feeling like they're going backwards? Number 1, we talked about perspective. Here's what I do. I'm easy on myself. I establish a new 100% for me. What is my new 100% today? It might not be what it used to be, but what is my new 100% where I can achieve certain goals, or I can continue to live accordingly in new thoughts?
Do you have could you practically share a day? Like, how does that really look on a day of your life?
Let's take yesterday.
What's 100% day for yesterday?
100% day was planning the podcast. I had 10 other things to do. I wrote out lists. I was completely fatigued. I said, today, I'm doing 3 of them. I'm doing 3 things on the list. And then I'm going to give myself a break and I'm going to lay down for 30 minutes because my body needs to be refueled. But I'm going to keep moving on this new course.
That's so good. And guess what? If you accomplish 3 things and you give yourself the grace, the kindness to accomplish those 3 things, Gordon, you're more productive than some of the healthiest people that I know.
Absolutely.
Because some of the healthiest people can blow off those 3 things and they don't accomplish the 10 things,
And then the next day, the 10 things turns into 12 things, then it turns into 20 things, and on and on and on.
I love that you said that. Thank you.
A second approach that I take, not making the corrective adaptive changes to your lifestyle that will keep you in your old former thinking. In other words, if I don't make these changes, if I don't take on those 3 things instead of the 10, and I beat myself up for not accomplishing the 10, you're living according to your former life. You're not living that new life. You're not living the life where there's a new 100% because you're going to be in creative balance with God to even spend more time with Him.
And how much worse does that make the physical pain when you're just beating yourself up?
Absolutely makes it worse. That's psychological component. It's not about someone being weak or needing to see a therapist. The fact remains, that's part of chronic pain. There is a depressive component. Some people are despondent. Some people are they're barely hanging on. You have to establish new standards for you. You have to feed your mind with new thoughts.
So good.
Here's the third thing that I try not to allow to come into my life. Doubt. Because doubting who you are is a self-judgment. doubting derails your neurological pathway to having a breakthrough. I want to continue the breakthrough. I want to walk right through it. I can't listen to self-doubt because it starts to make us rationalize a situation to fit our emotional state.
Exactly. You just said it. And doubt is very much centered on emotions.
Right. So we may be afraid to do this, Sharice. Fail, try again, take on more than we think we can handle. We start giving a lot of excuses. We make a lot of excuses for why an opportunity that presents itself isn't a good fit. So even though options are open to us, we just bypass them because doubt is screaming.
You know, one thing that I've seen in our marriage and the progression of our relationship through all of this is that doubt doesn't belong. But what's replaced a lot of doubt?
What's that, honey?
For me, curiosity. What if this does work? Instead of judging myself, saying, it's never going to work.
Because
I've made this shift, and in my doubt has been something I've struggled with, maybe even more than you. Because you even said in your worst health state of RSD at the beginning of our marriage, 6 months into our marriage, you said, we are not going to doubt God.
Right.
We're not going to doubt the goodness of God.
Right.
And I was more like Lot's wife, where I felt like, why don't you just curse God and die? Because it was too hard to watch you in that much pain.
Right.
But you didn't doubt. You didn't doubt his goodness. You had a lot of tears. You had a lot of suffering. Nothing takes that away. But the doubt part, I've learned through my own journey with you that curiosity is so much healthier for me than doubt.
Well, you have learned this and grown in this and walked in this way as the spouse. Mm-hmm. But look, you start to see how it snowballs in the way that you think and the way that you process. You are hungrier for knowledge. You're hungrier for God.
Yes.
You're hungrier for
Totally.
the new things because you've had a taste of what the new life is. But let me throw one challenge question at you before we give our thoughts of the day.
You go for it.
Okay?
I'm up for it.
What ideas are buried because you distrust yourself?
Wow.
That's a pretty significant
Do I have
question.
to answer that publicly?
Yes, you do, Sharice.
No, that is such a powerful question. I don't know if I actually can answer that on the spot. What? Say it again.
What ideas are buried because you distrust yourself?
I don't even know. I don't even know. I think I'm actually not in a state of distrusting myself personally, but I have been before. I have been. And when I've distrusted myself, the ideas, well, just even doing this podcast, writing a book with you, all of those things that are in our life, I would say that if I had allowed distrust to be there, I could have never gotten to this place where I'm going to trust you. I'm going to trust the process, no matter what the feelings are.
Right. I'm going to give one example for me because
Thank you.
I had time to think this question over.
You did.
What ideas are buried in me because I had distrust in myself? For me, it was this at first. I wasn't sure if I had the ability to endure painful trials through our faith in Christ, to synthesize pain and suffering into transformation. I wasn't sure if I could last the length of my trial. That was the distrust that I had. I didn't think that I could persevere through something for 28 years. And I've learned 28 years is not that long. It's still a momentary affliction when we take a look at eternity. But because of my relationship with God and the renewal of our mind and the spiritual maturity that's come along, we have seen pain literally turn into transformation for our lives. And so I feel like I'm being carried at times instead of me taking the load on my shoulders.
And that carrying is pulling you out of the quicksand.
Absolutely. Let's give a thought of the day. What do you have, sweetheart?
The mind is the most powerful thing that God's given us in our body. And our mind is not our brain. I've learned that through a lot of research and listening to Carolyn Leaf. Our mind is separate from our brain, but our brains do rewire. And I would say our mind is so much bigger than our brain. And we have the ability to change our mind, no matter how bad the pain is, how much you feel despondent, no matter what you're going through. I think the mind is the one thing that can't be taken away from you. So don't take it away from yourself.
That's good. I'm going to give 4 words. New thoughts, new life.
I love it. That's the mantra for this week.
That is so important. New thoughts, new life.
That's beautiful, Gordon.
So that concludes our show today.
Wow.
The core of how you can get involved with the Gordon and Cherise Show or our platform is this. Go to our website, gordonandcherise.com. You can access the Better Living community, the private Facebook group, YouTube. You can get our podcast shows.
That's right.
They're all out there. You can listen to those over and over again. We actually have people who are watching the shows and they're taking notes.
We thank you for listening and being a part of the community, and we can't wait to catch you next time.
Absolutely. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you so much.